Thank you. So it's great to be with you guys this morning. I want to share a little bit about this new series that we're going to be doing. As Neil said, this is going to be for a couple of months that we're going to be running this series, and we've called it Heartbeat. And this is just really a chance to get to know us. I get a chance to get to know the things that really stand out to us in our journey in faith, or is things that we felt the Lord has really put on our hearts. So it's just a chance for you to really get to know us and how our heart beats for the kingdom. So we've called it Heartbeat. So we're going to be sharing some different aspects of the kingdom and different things that are important to us. They're going to be by nature a bit more informal because we're over Zoom, and we are trying to keep things a bit shorter because everyone gets zoomed out a bit quickly. This is a bit of an unnatural way to preach. I genuinely like to see that kind of interaction and smiles and a bit of engagement. So do smile or nod at me as you go along, even if you are focusing very intently and being overwhelmed with the presence. Do smile at me and let me know that you are still with me. That would be wonderful. I just want to share a little bit about thankfulness this morning. This, as we all know, has been it's been a really challenging season for all of us, and it felt particularly challenging for me a few months ago. We'd reserved our house back in January, and all the announcements were made. I think end of January kind of time, and we'd sold our house initially. I think it was February we'd sold our house, and then it fell into a chain and it got stuck, and so we came out the chain and lockdown happened, and we were completely stuck in this moment of not being able to do anything. Lockdown happened, and we had obviously COVID, the global pandemic that there was. I'm a nurse by trade. My history is in intensive care, but I haven't worked clinically for 6 years. So I work with people who come out of intensive care, people who survive intensive care, and I help to rehabilitate them. So we all got brought back into intensive care clinically. And so we were back working long days. So they were 12.5-hour shifts. I was away for 15 hours a day. Busy days. I didn't see the girls for a number of days at a time. Neil was working incredibly hard, trying to get St Mungo's online, with all the kind of fear and anxiety that was around with a global pandemic. I was seeing some really challenging and heartbreaking situations in my work. The heavy PPE really kind of took its toll at times, and we were trying to juggle childcare in the midst of it all. So it was a really challenging time. And on top of that, we had this gorgeous house in North Berwick and a wonderful church community who were just feeling just outside of our reach. I couldn't quite reach you, and our hearts had begun to transition over to North Berwick, over to where you were, and we felt stuck in this moment. And I just felt so frustrated. Our dreams and our plans and everything had kind of been put on pause. We'd already been talking and praying about how we wanted to take things as we moved over to join you guys, and there was this big pause button that just got slapped straight onto all of our plans. And I definitely wasn't stressed about it. I definitely wasn't anxious about it. I felt frustrated. Has anyone else been there where you just feel so frustrated at stuff? Thank you, Nat. I see your hand. And I was sitting in the garden one day, and I was just having such a moan to God. I'm very real in my relationship with God, and He gets all my emotions as they are. And I was just having this moan with God about it, and I just felt Him challenge me to say, and He said, "Jo, can you tell me what you are thankful for?" And I sat in the garden. It was a gorgeous day like we'd had yesterday, and the kids were playing in the paddling pool, and I just said, God, I'm just so thankful for this garden, because we had lived in this garden. Our kids throughout lockdown had lived in the garden. And I said, God, I'm so thankful for this garden. I don't know how we would have coped in lockdown without this garden. It has a swing, some slides, a sand pit. We have little rabbits. They've got a playhouse. They've got a tree house. It has everything that a kid would want. And I suddenly realized, I had this moment when I realized, oh my goodness, if I had been in this new house, I would have a mud pile for a garden because it's a new build. And I would have no way of fixing that because tradesmen had all stopped. There was no way of getting supplies in. And I suddenly realized, oh my goodness, what would I have done? And then I began to say, well, I'm also really thankful for we have neighbours nearby who know us really well, who go to St Mungo's, and our kids are friends together. And we were able to see each other across the street and kind of throw comfort at each other and encouragement and check in with each other. And I suddenly realised, oh my goodness, if we'd moved into North Berwick, I'd be in a new house with no garden to stay in. The kids would be confined into the house, and I would know nobody in the area. I'd have empty houses next to us, and we would have no ability to get to know anybody. We would be completely isolated. We would have no ability to get to know anybody. Our kids, as we were coming out of lockdown, wouldn't have any friends where they would begin to spend time with. And I had this moment when I realized through thankfulness, just taking a moment to say thank you for the simplest of things completely changed my perspective to realize actually us staying where we are right now was the kindness of God. I looked back and I saw all the emotional turmoil that I'd had being in intensive care clinically, seeing some of the things that I'd seen in the working situations that we'd had with all of the changes. And I realized, gosh, if there had been a move in the midst of that, I think emotionally that could have been really, really challenging. And we could have felt even more isolated than what lockdown isolation felt like. And I realized that it was the kindness of God that had kept us where we were. And it was through thankfulness that I realized that it was his kindness that kept us where we were, in a house and a garden that had everything that the kids needed for that season, where people around us, as we began to come out of lockdown, who knew our kids, where they could play on the street, social distance on the street and with their bikes and playing ball together. For them, it was actually the kindness of God. And now we have come out of that. It is a perfect time for us to move, where we're coming out, we're strengthened, we've regathered strength, we've regathered energy, we're able to come back into this new season. And I realized that through kindness, through thankfulness, my perspective completely changed. So thankfulness will change our perspective if we allow it. It will increase our ability to see things as God sees them. Thankfulness, if you allow it, will grow your patience because your perspective has changed. My patience for the process completely changed because my perspective had changed. All of a sudden, I stopped being frustrated because my perspective had changed to see that it was his kindness that kept me here. And so all of a sudden, all my frustration left because I realized that this was part of his plan, and I had patience for the process. And thankfulness will always bring you closer to the Father. Through thankfulness and seeing his kindness at work instantly filled me with a thankfulness which didn't feel intentional. I didn't have to, has anybody else been there where you are intentionally being thankful? You are thanking yourself into praise and worship, and all of a sudden the intentionality that was there ceased because it became an overflow, because I realized that the kindness of God was all over this situation. I felt so seen and loved by him in that moment. Something that had felt frustrating, and I was saying, God, where are you in this? Suddenly, through that step of thankfulness, it changed me into seeing, actually, God, you're all over this, and you know me better than I know myself, to the point that you're in the detail. You're in the detail of keeping us where we're at, because you knew what my kids needed and you knew what we needed. So as Neil mentioned earlier, we have been doing some things on WhatsApp. So I've been encouraging people to share their favorite Psalms. So I'd shared one of my Psalms, which was Psalm 73. But my other absolute favorite Psalm is Psalm 100, which is a really famous Psalm. So if you have your Bible, please feel free to pick that up and and you can read along with me. I'm actually going to read this from the Message translation, just because I feel like the wording of it is really engaging and really connecting. So Psalm 100, verse 1 to 5, and it's from the Message translation that I'm reading. It says, "On your feet now, applaud God. Bring a gift of laughter. Sing yourselves into his presence. Know this, God is God, and God, God. He made us. We didn't make him. We're his people, his well-tended sheep. Enter with the password, thank you. Make yourselves at home, talking praise. Thank him, worship him, for God is sheer beauty, all generous in love, loyal always and ever." I love that phrase that said, enter with the password, thank you. Thank you. For me, it was a simple thank you for a garden that my kids had lived in throughout lockdown. And then if you can turn to Colossians 3, verse 15. Again, I'm just in the Message translation here because I like the emphasis that it gives. And it says this: let the peace of Christ keep you in tune with each other, in step with each other. None of this going off and doing your own thing. And then it says this: and cultivate thankfulness. Cultivate thankfulness. Do you know, in my experience, in times when I need to be thankful, not when it's overflowing, but times like in lockdown when I need to be thankful, times of growth and challenge, it's in these times that I've had to cultivate thankfulness, that I've had to be intentional about choosing thankfulness, about giving specific attention and intention to thankfulness so that I can cultivate it. I cultivate it so that I can then overflow with thankfulness. Without intentionally growing thankfulness, it's so easy for us to slip into criticism or negativity or hopelessness and even into despair. But that isn't the life that God has called us into. He has called us into life, into hope, into freedom. And thankfulness is one of the tools that we can use that launches us into freedom, into seeing his perspective, into recognizing his hand upon us through a simple tool of thankfulness. So as we grow in thankfulness, we become more aware of his presence, his kindness, and his gentleness towards us. Like I did in this simple process of just saying thank you for a garden. It changed my entire perspective. We see his perspective more clearly, and we become unshakable in the absolute knowledge that his plans are for me and that his plans are good. And that if there's challenges, which there are, thankfulness doesn't remove challenges. But through thankfulness, I realize that despite the challenges, he's still working, and that he's still good, and that he's still for me, and that he will work everything for my good in the end. And so my desire is that we become all so much more aware of his presence, of his kindness, and of his goodness in us and with us, so that we can cultivate a lifestyle of thankfulness. I know that this has been a really challenging season, and almost felt like to start with there was this momentum where everyone was together, and we're now into month 4, around there. I've kind of lost count a little bit actually. And while lockdown's kind of been easing, it's felt difficult. We look at Aberdeen and they're going back into lockdown again, and it's without an end point, isn't it? But if we can cultivate, despite this season, an attitude of thankfulness, an attitude of gratitude, if you wish, then we can see his presence working in us. We can see his kindness despite the difficult situations, and we can overflow into praise. Our thankfulness will be the password that enters us into his presence. So as a church, I was wondering if we could do what I have titled the 7-7 challenge. And I wondered if as a church together for 7 days, so take us till next Sunday, if every day we could write down 7 things that we're thankful for. Ideally, each day is a different 7. So you're not just copy and pasting the same 7 from the day before. But every day, write down 7 things that you're thankful for. And I'm going to be posting things on the WhatsApp to be reminding you. We'll send a midweek email if we remember, despite the move, to be doing this. But I think that as we do so, we can watch as we become more aware of his presence. I think that as you write down 7 things every day that you're thankful for, you'll become so much more aware of how God is working in your life, in your situation, in your home, in your work, in your friends and in your families. You'll become more aware of his presence. You'll become more aware of his kindness towards you, of his goodness towards you, of his faithfulness towards you. You will watch as thankfulness becomes easy. You know, it can be intentional to start with, and that's why, you know, writing 7 things down every day can, you know, be really helpful, because that intentionality starts a process. And that you will watch as you become unshakable in the face of challenges. A simple tool of thankfulness will help you become unshakable in the face of challenges, because you will see his presence and his goodness and his faithfulness around you. And I think one of the biggest things is that you will watch as it overflows into praise. I couldn't stop with just saying thank you. When thankfulness showed me that God's kindness was actually the thing that was working here, I couldn't stop at thankfulness. I had to overflow into praise. I had to just worship him, because thankfulness took me to that place. And so I'd love it if as a church we could do this together. So every day for 7 days, we're going to write down 7 things. You don't have to stop at 7. If you kind of get into the groove and you're like, wow, actually I am on a roll here, then you'll keep going and watch as that overflows into praise and worship. I'd love it if you could email me your progress, let me know how you're getting on. And if you are on the WhatsApp chat, I'd love to kind of hear from you, and we can be encouraging one another in what God's doing, and sharing testimony with each other as well. So does that sound good? How are people feeling about that? Have we got any thumbs up? People going to join me with that? Yeah, I've got a couple of thumbs up. Okay, that would be really great. And you don't have to share your list or anything, but it would be great if we could do that as a church community together. So I'm going to pray, and then Neil's going to come back and put us into our breakout rooms. And what I thought would be really fun to do in our breakout rooms, because this is like tea and coffee at the end of church. So if you have a cup of tea and biscuit, feel free to bring that in at this moment. Then I thought it'd be really fun if you just wanted to share together in your small groups just something this week that you're thankful for. And it can be really simple stuff like a garden, that you're thankful for a garden, or it can be big stuff like having a friend that's got in touch and wants to talk more about Jesus, or a family member that's had a breakthrough in health, or you know, whatever that might be. But so I thought it'd be really fun just for us to break out into our groups, and you can chat about things that you're thankful for, that you feel like God's been doing, and then you can just turn the chat however you want to, and then you can just sign off whenever you're ready, like you would at the end of church, and you can just head back into your day. All right, so I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to hand over to Mr. Tech, who's going to sort out all the breakout rooms for us. Okay. So Father, I just thank you for your faithfulness. I thank you that you are so kind to us, that you're so good to us. I thank you that you know us better than we know ourselves. And Lord, I thank you that as we recognize your good deeds and your kindness in our lives through thankfulness, that it leads us into praise, that it leads us into worship, that it shows us how you are in every detail of our lives. And so, Father, I pray that this week, as we go into our week, that you would show us how you are working in all of our lives. And I pray that you would transform us through thankfulness into a greater awareness of your kindness and your presence in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.